darlings, Mimi G here. Today we're going to be doing a new sew along for one of my new Simplicity fall patterns, pattern 8466. Today we're going to be doing View B, the skirt. Let's get started. Now if you're new to sewing or you need a refresher course, click the link in the description box below for the Sewing Basics video. Watch that video, then come back and sew along with me. Okay, so we're going to need pattern 8466, and of course on the back of the pattern envelope you have a list of fabric suggestions and notions that you're going to need, along with your sizing chart so you can pick the size that best corresponds to your body measurements. Okay, let's go over the pieces that we are going to need. So you're going to need to cut out pattern piece number 14, which is the back waistband. You're going to cut 2 on the fold of fabric and you're going to cut 1 on the fold of interfacing. You're also going to cut out pattern piece number 9, which is our pocket, and you're going to cut 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 10, which is the flap for our pocket, and you're going to cut 4 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. You're going to cut pattern piece number 13, which is our front waistband, and you're going to cut 4 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. You're going to cut pattern piece number 15, which is our belt loops, our carrier, and you're going to cut 1. You're going to cut pattern piece number 11, which is our yoke back, and you're cutting 1 on the fold. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 12, which is the back of our skirt, and you're going to cut 2. You're also going to cut out pattern piece number 8, which is our side front, and you're going to cut 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 7, which is the front of our skirt, and you're going to cut out 2. And finally, you're going to cut out pattern piece number 16, which is our tie belt, and you're going to cut 2. Okay, so we're going to start with our front pieces. Now what we're going to do is make our darts, and you want to make sure that you make your darts on both your fronts and then press them to one side. And then you should have a little dot here, and so what you want to do is you want to do 1 inch of stitching to the dot and then pivot and do 1 inch of stitching down just to reinforce this corner, and then you're going to clip into the corner. Now you're going to clip until you get to your dot, but don't clip through your stitching. Okay, so once you have your darts and we've clipped into our corner and reinforced it, we're going to go ahead and fold over the front. Now you should have interfaced the front portion of your skirt 1 full inch, and now we're going to fold that along your fold lines. Your pattern has fold lines, so just follow those. You're going to press it all the way down, and then you're going to fold again along the second fold line. Okay, so once you do your double fold, right, you're folding for your interfacing line, then you're folding for your facing. You're going to stitch close to the edge all the way down. Okay, now that both of my fronts are top stitched, I'm going to set this aside for just 1 second, and I'm going to grab our pocket. Now you should have lines on your pattern piece that you transferred over to your pocket. And so what you're going to do is you're going to bring those broken lines together, and you're going to stitch down about 1.5 inches. And you're going to do the same thing at the bottom, bring those broken lines together, you're going to stitch up, and then you're going to move on to the next one to create and form our center pleat. Okay, so I brought my first set of broken lines together. I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to move up. Back stitch. And now we're going to do the other one. Now I'm going to bring the broken lines together. I always make little notches, it's easier to see. I'm going to move down. Make sure the broken lines are aligned. gonna go ahead and press your pocket, and as you can see in the front, it creates this little pleat. You're gonna do both of your pockets the same way. Okay, so you're gonna go ahead and fold your pocket along the fold line, and we're going to stitch down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way down on both sides. Okay, so we're gonna back stitch at the beginning. And then do the other side along the fold line. Okay, and while we're here, we're gonna go ahead and make our corners. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold, and you're going to stitch straight down following your markings. And this is going to create that little corner. And you're going to do the other one the same way. And now we're going to give this a press. Okay, so I've given this a good press. You're going to want to poke out your corners that you made here and give your sides a good press. And now hopefully you've transferred all of your markings, so we're going to pin. So I'm going to pin my corner. And you're going to notice that it has quite a bit of space. That's because we're creating this sort of cargo pocket. And then make sure that you lift up so that the edge of the pocket and the skirt are aligned, and then pin. I'm going to take you over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how to stitch around your pocket. Okay, we're going to be sewing close to the edge, so back stitch at the beginning. Then you're going to do the other side. And now you're going to just baste across the bottom. And now we're going to go ahead and make a small pleat. So you should have a little dot. You're just going to bring that dot over to your seam, and we're going to tack it down. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. You're going to do your other pocket the same way. Okay, now that we have attached both of our pockets, we're going to work on our pocket flaps. I'm going to set these aside for just a sec. And with right sides facing, you should have one interfaced one and one non-interfaced one. We're going to stitch along the edge and across the bottom using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and fold your pocket out, your pocket flap to the right side. Give it a good press. Do 3/8 of an inch top stitching around and make your buttonhole the way I've done here. You're going to do that for both of your flaps. Okay, now we're going to stitch down our pocket flaps now that you have both your buttons done. So the right side of your flap is going to go onto your skirt. Align it with your line that you should have marked. I'm going to pin it in place. And you're going to stitch across 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so we're going to back stitch. Now you're going to fold your flap down And we're going to top stitch 3/8 of an inch from your seam line. You're going to do your other pocket flap the same way. Okay, once you have your pocket flap all done on both your fronts, you can set that aside. Okay, so now we're going to gather the upper portion of our side front. So you're going to do 2 rows of basting stitches so that you can gather the very top of it. Then we'll pull our threads and pin and attach it to our front. Okay, so now we're going to pull our basting stitches. And then you can sort of measure and see how much more you need to gather. Now we're going to pin it to our skirt. Now you have 2 double notches. So you have 2 double notches, and that's going to match up to the double notches that you should have along the front of your skirt. So just to keep myself from doing the right order, I'm going to pin there first. And then I'll continue pinning along the front. And now we're going to pin our skirt part, the gathers. So I'm going to pin at my side seam first. And the rest of the side of the front. And now I can see that I've gathered just enough. I'm going to make sure that my pocket bag is up towards the pocket and not folded onto itself, because we don't want to get it caught in the seam. Now we're going to start at our side seam, sew across, and then down the front. Okay, we're going to back stitch at the beginning. Now we're going to pivot. I'm going to move everything out of the way. Now I want you to press your seam with the gathers up towards your pocket, and the side and the seam allowance along the front towards the front of the skirt. Okay, now we're going to take the back of our skirt, and with right sides facing, we're going to stitch together along the notched side. So you should have 3 notches. That's the center back. So we're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then I want you to press your seam open. Once you've sewn the center back of your skirt and pressed your seams open, go ahead and create 2 rows of basting stitches so we can gather the back of our skirt onto our yoke. I've created my basting stitches, and I'm just going to pull. Then you can open up your yoke so you can measure out. Distribute your gathers evenly, and then you can place your yoke front right sides facing onto the back of your skirt. I'm going to pin in the center first, and then I'm going to go ahead and pin at my notches. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch across 5/8 of an inch. Okay, we're going to back stitch at the beginning. Now I want you to press your seam allowances up towards your back yoke. Okay, I went ahead and pressed my seam allowance up, and I went ahead and gathered my yoke at the top at the waistline in between the 2 little dots or notches, so make sure that you do that as well. I'm going to set this aside for just a sec, and we're going to work on our carrier. So I've already pressed mine, so I'm going to show you what we did. You are going to press your edges towards the middle, and then you're going to fold it in half again and press. Now we're going to top stitch along the edge. Okay, now go ahead and cut your carriers into 5 pieces, each measuring 2 3/4 of an inch. Now we're going to set these aside and we're going to sew together the side seams of our waistband. Okay, so I have my back waistband and I have my 2 front waistband pieces, and we're going to place them right sides facing, matching your side notches, and I'm going to pin. And if you notice, I'm using the interfaced waistband pieces, so make sure you're using those. Now go ahead and stitch down the side seams of your waistband using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then press your seams open. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and pin our carriers to our waistband. So we're going to place them along the dots that you should have marked. And we're going to base just across the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to stitch across the ends. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and sew our side seams. So we're attaching front to back, right sides are facing. I'm going to pin matching my notches. And I want to make sure that my front and back seam lines match up. Now go ahead and pin the other front to back the same way. Take it to your sewing machine and using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, do 1 straight stitch all the way down. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and attach our waistband to our skirt. So you're going to start by first matching up the notches at the center back. Align your side seams. And your waistband is going to extend by 5/8 of an inch. Okay, now go ahead and stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, you're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Now go ahead and press your seams up towards your waistband. Okay, grab the remaining pieces of your waistband, the non-interfaced ones, and you're going to stitch them together at the sides the same way that you did for your interfaced ones, and press your seams open. Okay, so now go ahead and grab your other waistband, and what I did is I turned up the hem allowance and I pressed it, and now with right sides facing, I'm going to place it over the top of my waistband, matching side seams and notches. Now we're going to go ahead and stitch across this top, understitch, and then finish off the front ends. Okay, back stitch at the beginning. Okay, now you want to go ahead and understitch. So I'm going to start at the beginning again. And I'm going to start about 2 inches from the front edge. And making sure your seam allowances are facing the waistband. You're stitching close to the edge. Okay, now we're going to fold over and close off the front end. Now clip your corners and then turn this to the right side. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and stitch in the ditch. So make sure to press your waistband to the inside, and we're going to pin, making sure that the folded edge of your facing of the waistband is just past your stitching. And we're going to pin, but we're going to pin on the right side. Okay. Now we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch in the ditch. Okay, so you're going to try and keep your needle right inside this seam line here, okay? This is what's called stitching in the ditch. So you try and go slow if you need to. Okay, now we're going to take our belt loops up, fold 3/8 of an inch, and stitch across the top. You're going to do the rest of your belt loops the same way. Okay, now you can go ahead and do your buttonholes when you're finished, or you can do them now, that's up to you. Now all that's left for you to do is the hem of your skirt. And so what you're going to do is, I left about 2 inches open on my band where we turned over and then turned over our facing. And the reason I did that is so that I could fold over and stitch across and then do the double fold of my hem. So I'm going to go ahead, turn this over and pin. And I'm going to do the other side the same way. You turn over and pin. And now we're going to stitch this closed first and then do a double hem. We're going to stitch 5/8 of an inch. Then you're just going to turn that to the inside, push out your corner. And then for your hem, you're just going to do a double fold. And you can press this first and stitch, or you can eyeball it. It really just depends on which you prefer. I would suggest turning, pressing, turning again, and pressing, and then stitching close to the edge all the way to the other side of your skirt. You're going to continue the same way until you reach the other end of the skirt. Once you finish the hem of your skirt is completely finished. Now the only thing left, and it's only if you choose, is to make your tie belt. And so we have 2 pieces cut out, and with right sides facing, we're going to stitch along the short end, which is notched 5/8 of an inch, and then we're going to fold this in half. Okay, so now you're just going to fold this in half. I'm going to put a pin right at the center back. And now what you're going to do is you're going to leave about a 2-inch opening in the center, and you're going to stitch going down the long end and then across the short end. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side, sewing along the long edge and then across the short end. And then using this opening in the center, you're going to turn your ties right side out. Okay, so I went ahead and stitched, left my little opening. I did 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and now I'm going to push my ends through the opening. You're going to push the other end out the same way and then give it one good press. Once you give it a good press, just pull your ties through your belt loops. And you are all done. Alright guys, that's all there is to it. Until next time, peace.